Hi guys, welcome back to Fresh Take. I'm Rowan, and in this week's installment we're going to be looking at Udon Noodle Chicken Broth. I've never done this before, so it's a first try. Every now and again I will try new things because cooking is all about learning, teaching the viewers and teaching myself. So it's going to take about 5 hours for the resting time of the noodles, and we're just going to jump straight in here. So we're starting off with 240 grams of plain white flour. Also got 72 grams of tapioca flour. That's just going to aid the noodles to have a silky smooth finish. Got 120 ml of warm water, and then we've also got 2 teaspoons of salt. And by all means buy the noodles straight from the supermarket, and this dish is going to take about 20 minutes in total. But where's the fun in that? So for the broth we're going to be going with a litre of the brown chicken stock we made in our last video. We've got 2 centimetres of ginger root chopped up, and also 2 star anise, 6 shiitake mushrooms dried, and 2 spring onions. We've also got 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, 1 teaspoon of MSG, and 2 tablespoons of sweet chili sauce to give it a nice kick. We're also then going to finish it with a nice umami flavour with the white miso. If you've never used MSG before, it's the stuff that's in all Chinese takeaway food that makes it taste so nice. So, starting with the noodles, we've got our water, we're going to add our salt, and we're just going to stir it until it's dissolved. Adding the salt directly to the flour apparently makes quite a tough dough, so we're just going to dissolve it first. I'm going to be using a freestanding mixer for this, so just in a large bowl we're going to add the flour and the tapioca flour, and we're going to add our water. And that's all the ingredients that you're going to need for the noodles. So we're going to combine it using the K paddle. You can easily do this by hand or in a food processor. It's a very dry dough, so just got to work it a bit. By the time we come to rolling this in about 3 hours time, you'll notice a big difference. So just push everything together, and then we're going to put it inside a bag, and this is the weird bit about this recipe, but I guess it's authentic. Put it inside a sandwich bag, leaving a little gap, and we are going to stand on it and press it down with our feet for about 2 minutes. I presume the idea of this is to work the gluten, and I really was there in my kitchen jumping up and down on this. As you can see, it is a lot smoother, and I guess it did work. It does produce noodles at the end of it, so I'm not here to fault the recipe at all. So we're going to put it back in our bag and we're going to rest it for half an hour. So here's a fun story. In Japan, potato farmer families would use the starch from their potatoes to make these noodles, and I guess that's where the idea of using starch like tapioca comes from. So you'll be able to see at this point that the dough is a lot softer, still not perfectly soft like a pasta dough, but it is a lot softer and a lot more workable. We're going to put it back in our bag, and you've guessed it, we're going to stand on it again for 2 minutes. Just push out all the air and make sure you've got that little hole so you don't pop the bag. And there you go. I was wondering when my amazing stepping skills was going to come into practice, and here we have it. I'm just going to fold this up again, working it a little bit and just getting a feel for the dough. And then we're going to put it back in our bag and we're going to rest it again. This time for about 3 hours at room temp, or if you've really planned ahead here, overnight in the fridge. So we've now come to rolling the dough. It's had the resting time, and I'm not going to fault this recipe at all here, but it said use a pasta machine. As you can see, I had a disaster doing this. It might be because to get the pasta machine in the shot I couldn't screw it down, so I had to use tape, or it could be the fact that the dough's just too dry, but I gave up on that pretty quickly and resorted to just rolling it by hand. Bit longer, bit more tiresome, but it works, and I can only imagine this is the more traditional way of doing it. Just really put your muscles into it. The lucky thing with udon noodles is the fact it doesn't need to be too thin. Udon noodles are quite chunky, So I've rolled this to about half a centimetre thickness. And we're going to roll it up, and just using our knife, we're just going to chop it. And there you have it, some udon noodles. The perfect thing about these are you can now freeze them and then just blanch them whenever you want them. So we're just going to put these to one side while we make the broth. Perfect. So for the broth, we're going to start off with a large saucepan. We're going to add into it our chicken stock. Beautiful and rich chicken stock we've got here. You can obviously use a pork stock for this, a beef stock, or of course a vegetable stock. Traditionally this would be more of a dashi than a stock. And we're just going to add in basically all the ingredients at once. So we've got our soy sauce, we've got our MSG, we've got our ginger, our star anise, our dried shiitake mushrooms. It's going to give it a really nice earthy rich taste to it, and our sweet chili. And we're going to put this on the stove just to heat it through, get the infusion going, bring it up to a steady simmer for about 10 minutes. And while that's cooking away, I'm going to slice up our spring onions. Also got a big old pan of boiling water, slightly salted, on the stove. That's going to be for our udon noodles. So we're coming down to the countdown to finish this now. Put these spring onions to one side. Going to be using half of these to garnish and half of them in the broth at the end. So here's our broth. Really aromatic. We're just going to finish it off with the miso. So how I like to do this is take a ladle. I'm going to use about a teaspoon of this miso. Scoop up a small amount of the broth, and we're just going to dissolve it in that small amount. It just saves any lumps being left in the broth. When it's nice and smooth, we're going to add it back in. Beautiful umami flavour. So bring our spring onions back into the picture. We're going to use half of it here just to finish that aroma in the broth. Nothing too strong, just very subtle undertones. So we have our udon noodles that we've just blanched for about 20 minutes in the boiling water. I've then strained them off, given them a little wash in warm water to remove any leftover starch. They'll still have a slight bite to them, which I quite like. We've got our broth. I've actually added some leftover roasted chicken wings too to bring out the chicken flavour. And we've got our serving bowls. Beautiful chunky noodles there. The tapioca flour has just given it a nice silky finish that you wouldn't usually get from just a whole wheat flour. I've also got the chicken thighs from the roast chicken that we did the other day, and we've just roasted it slowly, stripped it down, pulled it apart, and we're just going to top our noodles with this. Taking our broth, spooning it over. Nothing complicated here, this is comfort food. Getting some of those aromatics in there. If you're a ramen fan, by all means, do a soy cured egg to go on top. That'd be beautiful. Nice runny yolk. But here we've kept it simple, homemade and impressive. It's packed with flavour. Those aromatics from the ginger and the shiitakes will give it a rich, wholesome finish. We're just going to top it off with our leftover spring onions. I always love the freshness of spring onions to finish. All the way from just some leftover chicken bones from a roast chicken. And there we have it. Time to tuck in. Cheers for watching, guys. And like always, the recipe for this video can be seen below in the description. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Ramen for more content. Please don't forget, like, comment, share and subscribe to these videos. Catch you next time. This has been fresh take.